I asked 3,000 people to give each Pokémon generation a rating from 1 to 5. I have in my hand a list of the most and least popular Pokémon generations. In this video, I'll go through that list, as well as explaining a little bit about how I collected the data. Right, let's find out what the most and least popular Pokémon generations are. So, in the past, I've asked people to rank their favourite Mario and Zelda games, and so this time, I wanted to do that for the Pokémon franchise. However, there are a total of 122 Pokémon games out there, which is just too many to ask people about. Luckily, each group of games can be handily categorized into different generations. Gen 1 includes the very oldest Pokémon games, while Gen 9 is made up of the newest ones. So, with that decided, I began putting together a survey where people could rate every single Pokémon generation. Each one can be ranked from 1, hated it, to 5, loved it. Next, I added text boxes where people could write up to 5 words about each Pokémon generation. That way, we can find out a little bit about why people gave the generations the ratings that they did. And finally, the very last step was to send this survey out into the world. And so, I posted the link on YouTube and Twitter, and then it was time to wait for the responses to start rolling in. Right, a few days have gone by since I sent out the link to that survey, and now many people have given me their Pokémon generation opinions. I have in my hand a list of the least to most popular Pokémon generations, so without any further ado, let's go through them all. In 9th place, with an average score of 3.05, is Gen 8, made up of Sword, Shield, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, and Legends Arceus. Now, this is the second to most recent Pokémon generation, and it's kind of a weird one. It's made up of a lot of different games. Sword and Shield are very traditional Pokémon games, albeit the first ones released on a home console, whereas Legends Arceus is very much an experiment. Altogether, a varied bunch of games. People have said, unremarkable but lots of fun. People should like more. Boring but still fun moments. And Legends Arceus is fantastic, because Legends Arceus is very much the black sheep of the bunch. It's completely different from any Pokémon game that Game Freak have made up until that point. Sword and Shield, on the other hand, are kind of dull and repetitive. And as for Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, well, the less said, the better. Next up, in 8th place, is Gen 9 with a score of 3.18. Gen 9 is comprised only of Scarlet and Violet, the most recent Pokémon games, and some of the most divisive Pokémon games that Game Freak has ever released. This generation is extremely ambitious, being the very first true open-world Pokémon games, and yet, these games are also very buggy. I mean, I'm sure you've seen by now videos of the often hilarious bugs found in these games, and people's responses really reflect that. Glitchy, but I love it. Perfect, except for the performance. Wish devs had more time, and a lot of people saying haven't played yet. Next up, in 7th place, is Gen 7, with a score of 3.25. Now, Gen 7 includes Sun, Moon, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, Let's Go Pikachu, and Let's Go Eevee. And that's a lot of different games split across 2 different consoles even, the 3DS and the Switch. Now, Sun and Moon were the very first Pokémon games I ever played, so I do have a bit of fondness for these games. They're not without flaws, however. Many people have pointed out too many cutscenes. Yeah, the cutscenes, man. Way too many cutscenes. It's a running trend throughout the Pokémon series that players just want to get stuck into the adventure, and yet Game Freak won't leave them alone. And unfortunately, Sun and Moon are a prime example of that. It's not all negative though. 2 people wrote, like the exotic vibe and coolest region. Not in terms of temperature though. Ha 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 ha. Next, in 6th place, is Gen 1 with an average score of 3.31. Gen 1 is made up of red, green in Japan, blue, and yellow. This is the very first Pokémon generation, and these are the games that introduced Pokémon, the phenomenon, unto the world. And because of that, there's a lot of love out there for these games. Nostalgic, classic, Buggy but fun, fun but dated, because it goes without saying that a pair of Pokémon games released in the 90s will have aged just a little bit, and these games are full to the brim of weird and interesting bugs. Still, if you play these games with an open mind, I think you're still gonna enjoy them as much as people did in the 1990s. Next, in 5th place is Gen 6 with an average score of 3.36, made up of X, Y, Omega Ruby, and Alpha Sapphire. Now, this is the first Pokémon generation to be released on the 3DS, and so the first fully 3D set of Pokémon games. Because of that, there are just a few teething problems to be found here. Some people wrote, rough transition to 3D, and tried new things but failed. Because for Game Freak, switching from 2D to 3D game development must have been a massive task, and X and Y, considering that, are pretty good games. You do sort of get the feeling, though, that all of Game Freak's resources were poured into getting these 3D games to even work. And so because of that, some other aspects, like the story and the graphics, fell just a little bit by the wayside. Overall, though, these are very solid Pokémon games. Next up, in 4th place is Gen 2 with an average rating of 3.40. Gen 2 is made up of Gold, Silver, and Crystal, and this generation, being the follow-up to the immensely successful Gen 1, had a lot to live up to, and I think it managed to live up to it brilliantly. Some of the responses include Gen 1 but better, great improvement over Gen 1, trust me, Thomas, the best. And you know, I always listen to people if they ask me to trust them. These games did a bunch of great things. For one, they included not one region, but 2. I don't think you can ask for more volume of content than is found in these games. And so perhaps, like Gen 1, they might have aged a little bit if you go back and play them now, but it goes without saying that Gen 2 was an impressive follow-up to the initial Pokémon boom. Next up, in 3rd place is Gen 5 with an average rating of 3.76. Now, Gen 5 is made up of Black, White, Black 2, and White 2, and this was the very last Pokémon generation to be released on the DS. And so because of that, Game Freak had a lot to prove here. Could they follow up the previous, very successful Pokémon generation? Well, the answer was yes. Some of the responses include an underrated gem, best of the DS Pokémon, great story, great games, dumbass Pokémon. Yeah, there seems to be this resounding belief that Gen 5's Pokémon aren't very good. I think I would disagree though. Every generation has its fair share of more memorable and less memorable Pokémon. It's just that Gen 5 has so many more new Pokémon that there's a higher number of Pokémon that people don't really love. On the whole though, a great generation. The only mistake these games made was trying to get rid of Pikachu. Next up, in 2nd place, is Gen 4 with an average rating of 3.84. Now, Gen 4 includes Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, Heart Gold, and Soul Silver, and that is an incredible group of games I've just listed off. Gen 4 is really beloved, and for good reason. Heart Gold and Soul Silver are some of the most beloved remakes that Game Freak have ever made, and Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum are incredible too. Some of the responses include Peak, the absolute peak of Pokémon. Still the best generation. Heart Gold, Soul Silver is phenomenal. Now, not everyone loves all of this generation. One person wrote, Diamond, Pearl, Platinum is flawed, Heart Gold, Soul Silver peak. But on the whole, all 5 of these games are extremely impressive, and this really locked in the formula that Game Freak would follow going forward. And finally, the number 1 Pokémon generation, according to the people who filled out my survey, is Gen 3, with an average score of 3.87. Now, Gen 3 is made up of Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire Red, and Leaf Green. And this is the first generation where Game Freak decided to try remaking some of their older games, to great success, I think it has to be said. Some of the responses include the best game in the series, beginning of a golden age. This gen's Pokémon are iconic, and excellent soundtrack, vibrant world, Mudkip. A great use of the 5-word limit there. Now, if Gen 4 is the generation that locked in the Pokémon formula, Gen 3 is the one that established it. Don't get me wrong, Gen 1 and Gen 2 have some really great games, but Gen 3 really set up the Pokémon formula that Game Freak would follow from there on out. It's only in the last few years that Game Freak has even tried changing it a little. The new Pokémon feel fresh, it has great music. What is not to love about Gen 3? There is one thing. There's just a little bit, just a tiny bit, too much water. Hey, thank you very much for watching. In the past, I've talked about popular Mario games and Zelda games, but it was fun tackling a brand new franchise, that being Pokémon. A huge thank you to every single person who filled out my survey. I quite obviously couldn't have made this video if they hadn't done that, so it means a lot. Oh, and let me know in the comments what your favorite Pokémon generation is. There's a lot of great ones here, and some not so great ones too. Anyway, I shall see you in the next video, and goodbye. See ya!